The frigid winter winds howled across the fjord, carrying the scent of blood and salt as the raid party returned. Njord Harald's son stood at the prow of his longship, the Sea Tooth, his red gold hair whipping against his face. A dozen ships followed in his wake, heavy with plunder from the Saxon shores. Men cheered from the docks of Ravholm, women and children rushing down the muddy paths between the longhouses to welcome their warriors home. Njala Ketilsdottir watched from the ridge above, her heart pounding beneath her woolen dress. She clutched her father's arm for support, the old chieftain's weathered face betraying nothing of his thoughts. The approaching ships carried her fate. "He returns victorious, as promised," Ketil muttered, his voice rough from years of shouting commands. "The arrangement stands. When the moon is full, you will be wed to Lord Cnut Njolsson, and our clans will be bound by blood and oath." Njala's fingers tightened on her father's arm. "Father, I beg you once more, enough." Ketil's tone severed her plea like an axe through kindling. "The Raven clan needs this alliance. Cnut's wealth and warriors will ensure our survival through the coming winters. Your duty is to your people, not your heart." Njala fell silent, watching the distant figure of Cnut at his ship's helm. Tall and broad-shouldered, his reputation for brutality in battle was matched only by his skill as a trader and shipbuilder. The finest match in 3 days' sail, her father had declared when announcing the betrothal at last year's Yule feast. A worthy husband for the daughter of a chieftain. What her father never understood was that Njala had seen beneath Cnut's carefully crafted facade. Behind those ice-blue eyes lay not honor, but calculation. Not protection, but possession. She had watched him during the feasts, how he treated his thralls, how he spoke of women when deep in his cups. The Cnut that the Jarls and Corals respected was not the man who would share her bed and hearth. "The gods have decided," Ketil said, guiding her back toward their longhouse. "Best make your peace with it." But Njala knew differently. In the sacred grove 3 moons past, she had received a vision that still burned in her mind. Not Cnut's children she would bear, but another's. Not here would she make her home, but in land she had yet to see. The gods had shown her a different path, one that demanded courage she wasn't certain she possessed. The wedding preparations consumed the settlement for days. Sacrifices were made to Freya and Thor, mead flowed freely, and Njala's mother and aunts adorned her with the finest linens and silver brooches that had been passed down through generations. Her bridal crown, heavy with amber and silver, had been worn by Ketil women for 200 years. On the morning of her wedding, as women braided her long auburn hair and painted protective symbols on her palms, Njala looked out through the smoke hole of the longhouse. Ravens circled overhead, Odin's messengers. A sign, but of what? "You look troubled, cousin," said Astrid, her fingers nimbly working through Njala's thick hair. "Many women would give their eye like Odin himself for such a match." "He is cold," Njala whispered. "His heart beats only for gold and glory." "Most men are the same," Astrid shrugged. "In time, children warm even the coldest heart." But Njala had felt the chill emanating from Cnut, had seen how his gaze passed through her as though she were already his property. This was more than a warrior's reserve, it was emptiness where a soul should dwell. When the time came, Njala walked toward the sacred grove where the ceremony would take place, her father beside her, pride evident in his stride. Ahead, she could see Cnut waiting by the ancient oak, his finest cloak clasped with gold, his beard freshly wooled and braided. Behind him stood his men, hardened raiders who had followed him across the whale road to distant shores. The elder raised his hands to begin the ceremony, calling upon the gods to witness. Cnut stepped forward, his hand extended to receive his bride. And Njala felt the moment stretch like heated metal on an anvil. Her entire life balanced on this edge. The raven circled lower. "I cannot," she said, her voice barely audible at first, then stronger. I will not. A collective gasp rippled through the gathered witnesses. What nonsense is this? Ketil hissed, gripping her arm. You dishonor us all. Njala pulled free of his grasp. To bind myself to a man with no honor in his heart would dishonor the gods themselves. Cnut's face darkened like a storm cloud. You dare question my honor? I who have brought wealth to your clan through this arrangement. Honor is not measured in silver, Njala replied, removing the bridal crown, but in how one treats those with no power to resist. She turned to address the stunned gathering. I have seen how he beats his thralls for sport. How he boasts of villages he's put to torch, not for glory, but for pleasure in others' suffering. Her voice grew stronger with each word. I will not bind my fate to such a man, not even for the good of my clan. Cnut's hand moved to his sword. Ketil, control your daughter before I forget the respect due to your hall. But Njala was already backing away. The gods have shown me another path. Before anyone could stop her, she turned and ran, disappearing into the thick forest surrounding the settlement, leaving stunned silence in her wake. 5 winters passed. The Raven clan weathered Cnut's fury, paying a heavy war-guild for Njala's insult, though many whispered she had been right to flee. Rumors said she had taken passage on a merchant ship bound for the eastern lands, others claimed she had joined a settlement far to the west. All agreed that wherever Njala Ketilsdottir had gone, she had escaped Cnut's vengeance. Cnut himself had grown in power, his raids more daring, his holdings more vast. He had taken no wife, though many families had offered their daughters. The insult of that day had carved itself into his face, leaving it harder, colder than before. In the settlement of Skalaholt, 2 days' sail south of Ravholm, Njala had built a new life. Her skill with healing herbs and knowledge of runes had earned her a place among the people. She lived in a modest house near the shore, gathering medicines from the forest and tending to the sick. Few knew her true identity. She called herself Nana now, claiming to be a widow from the northern fjords. It was there she had met Calder. Unlike Cnut, he was a trader, not a raider, sailing his merchant vessel between settlements with goods from distant lands. His gentle humor and quiet strength had drawn her to him, and when he spoke of his journeys, she saw the world through his eyes, a place of wonder rather than conquest. After 2 years, they had married in the old way, surrounded by their new community. Calder knew her true identity, knew the risk of claiming her as his wife, but his love outweighed his fear. Their daughter, Frydis, now toddled about their hearth, her laughter brightening even the darkest winter days. Njala was gathering herbs along the shore when she saw the ships approaching, 5 longships with black sails, their prows carved into snarling beasts. Her blood turned to ice as she recognized the lead vessel. The sea tooth had found her at last. She grabbed Frydis and ran for the settlement, shouting warnings as she went. The alarm horn sounded, but Skalaholt was a trading port, not a fortress. They had few warriors to defend against a determined raiding party. Calder met her at their doorway. Take Frydis to Ingrid's house in the high forest, he said, already donning his leather armor. If we cannot turn them back, you must flee further inland. Cnut comes for me, Njala said, clutching her daughter. Not for plunder. If I surrender myself, never, Calder cupped her face in his hands. We face this together or not at all. The ships were already beaching on the shore, warriors pouring out with shields and spears ready. At their head strode Cnut, his face like carved stone beneath his helmet. He had grown more massive, if possible, his arms thick with golden bands of conquest. The village men formed a defensive line, pitiful against such a force. Njala watched from the trees above as Cnut approached, his voice carrying clearly in the cold air. I seek only one thing from this place, he called out. The woman who was promised to me. Njala Ketilsdottir. Deliver her, and we leave in peace. Calder stepped forward. There is no one here by that name. Turn your ships and go. Cnut's laugh was like ice cracking. Do not lie to me, trader. My scouts have tracked her to this place. I come to claim what is mine by right. No person can be owned, Calder replied. Not by right, not by promise, not by force. Bold words from a man about to die. Cnut raised his axe, the signal for his men to advance. Njala could not watch the man she loved die for her past. She handed Friedis to an older woman and stepped from the trees, making her way down to stand beside Calder. I am here, Cnut Njolsson, she called. Let these people be. Your quarrel is with me alone. Cnut's eyes found her, and for a moment, something like triumph flashed in them. The bride who fled. At last. I was never your bride, Njala said. I refused you before gods and men, and brought shame to my name that can only be washed away with blood, Cnut growled. 5 winters I have searched, building my strength, extending my reach. All to find you. Calder moved protectively in front of Njala. She is my wife now, under Thor's protection. Whatever claim you thought you had is void. Cnut's eyes narrowed. Wife? You dare take what was promised to me? His gaze shifted to Njala. Have you whelped his children as well? Compounded your betrayal? Njala lifted her chin. I have borne a daughter to the man I chose freely. A man of true honor. Cnut's face contorted with rage. Step aside, trader. I will take what is mine and burn the rest. Then you must kill me first, Calder said, drawing his sword. Cnut smiled coldly. With pleasure. I challenge you to homegang, Njala suddenly declared, her voice ringing out over the tense standoff. As is my right under the law. Murmurs spread through both groups of men. The ancient duel could not be refused without losing all honor. Cnut's laugh was genuine this time. You? Fight me in the sacred circle? Have you lost your wits as well as your honor, woman? Not I, Njala replied. My champion will fight for me. She looked at Calder, who nodded gravely. I accept, he said. Cnut studied them both, then shrugged. It makes no difference. I will kill your protector and take you regardless. Prepare the ground for homegang. The dueling ground was prepared on the beach, a square marked with hazel branches, as tradition demanded. Calder stood at one corner, dressed in simple leather armor, his sword and shield ready. Cnut occupied the opposite corner, resplendent in mail and helmet, his massive war axe gleaming. The village elder recited the ancient laws of homegang. The first to step outside the square or be unable to continue would be declared defeated. The winner's claim would be recognized by gods and men. Njala stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart pounding like a war drum. Calder was skilled with a blade, but Cnut was a legendary warrior, a berserker whose rage made him nearly unstoppable in battle. As the elder finished speaking, Cnut removed his helmet, revealing his face fully to Njala for the first time in 5 years. Scars crossed his cheeks and forehead, new trophies of battles fought since she'd last seen him. But it was the emptiness in his eyes that chilled her most. Before we begin, Cnut called out, know why I have hunted you across the northern seas, Njala Ketilsdottir. He turned to address the gathered villagers. This woman was promised to me to seal an alliance between our clans. Her father received 30 silver marks and the promise of my protection. On our wedding day, she fled like a coward, bringing shame to both our houses. He turned back to Calder. Your wife is an oath-breaker. The gods themselves demand justice. Calder's expression remained steady. The gods favor free hearts over forced vows. No oath made under duress binds the soul. The elder raised his hand. Begin. Cnut attacked immediately, his axe whistling through the air in a deadly arc. Calder barely managed to raise his shield in time, the force of the blow driving him back a step. The crowd gasped as splinters flew from the shield's rim. Your husband fights well, Cnut taunted Njala as he pressed his advantage, but he lacks the killer's instinct. How long before I split him like firewood? Calder circled, keeping his distance, looking for an opening. He was quicker than Cnut, but each blow he landed seemed to hardly affect the larger man. It was like striking at oak. Blood soon flowed from cuts on both men. Calder's shield arm hung awkwardly, the bones surely cracked from Cnut's powerful blows. Yet he fought on, darting in to strike before retreating from Cnut's devastating counter-attacks. Njala watched, her nails digging into her palms, as her past and present clashed before her. Every blow seemed to shake the earth beneath her feet. She had caused this, her choices had led to this moment, and now the man she loved might pay the ultimate price. Cnut, growing impatient, launched a furious series of blows, driving Calder back toward the edge of the square. One more step and he would lose by forfeit. You're defeated, Cnut growled. Surrender now and I'll grant you a quick death. Calder, breathing heavily, blood streaming from a cut above his eye, shook his head. I will never surrender her to a man without honor. Honor? Cnut roared, his face flushing with rage. What do you know of honor? I have conquered settlements from here to the eastern lands. Kings pay me tribute. Yet you hunt one woman across the seas because she denied you, Calder replied. Is that the mark of a great man? Or a wounded child? With a bellow of rage, Cnut charged, his axe raised for a killing blow. But his fury made him careless. Calder sidestepped at the last moment, bringing his sword down in a precise arc that caught Cnut behind the knee, severing tendons. Cnut crashed to the ground, his axe flying from his grasp. Before he could recover, Calder's sword point rested at his throat. Yield, Calder said quietly. It's over. Cnut's eyes burned with hatred. Kill me then. I would rather die than live with this shame. Calder looked to Njala, who had stepped forward to the edge of the dueling ground. She met his gaze, then looked down at Cnut. Death would be too easy, she said. Too clean an ending for the pain you've caused. What would you have me do with him? Calder asked. Njala considered the defeated warrior before her. The law says his life and claim are forfeit. But I would add one condition to his defeat. She addressed Cnut directly. You will swear on your honor and by all the gods that you will never again pursue vengeance against me or mine. You will return to your lands and release my father's clan from any obligation to you. Cnut spat blood onto the sand. And if I refuse? Then my husband will be justified in taking your life here and now, Njala replied calmly. Choose, Cnut Njolson. Death or oath? For a long moment, only the sound of waves and Cnut's labored breathing could be heard. Finally, the defeated warrior nodded. I swear it, he growled. By Thor's hammer and Odin's eye. I release you from all claims and vows. His eyes, cold as midwinter ice, locked onto hers. May you live long enough to regret your choice. Calder lowered his sword and stepped back. Cnut's men rushed forward to help their lord to his feet, his leg wound leaving him unable to stand unaided. As they carried him toward their ships, Njala felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a burden she had carried for 5 long winters. Calder came to her side, his face pale from blood loss but his eyes bright. It is truly over, he said, leaning on her for support. Njala watched the raiders retreating to their ships. "Yes," she said. "We are free." The feast that night celebrated both victory and survival. Mead flowed freely as the villagers honored Calder's bravery. Njala sat beside him, their daughter asleep in her lap, watching the firelight play across the faces of people who had become her true family. "Did you ever regret it?" Calder asked quietly, his wounded arm now properly bound. "Fleeing your wedding? Leaving your clan?" Njala considered the question. "I regretted the pain it caused my father. The price our people paid for my choice." She looked down at their sleeping daughter. "But I never regretted following the path the gods showed me. It led me to you." Calder smiled, touching a gentle finger to Freydis's cheek. "When I first met you, gathering herbs by the shore, I thought you the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. But it was the sorrow in your eyes that called to me. I wanted to understand it." "And now you have seen its cause," Njala said. "I have seen a woman brave enough to defy tradition for what she knew was right," Calder replied. "How could I not love such courage?" Across the hall, the village elder raised his horn. A toast to Calder Northman, who fought with the strength of Thor himself. Cheers erupted as horns were raised. "And to Nanna, whose wisdom and healing hands have blessed our settlement for 5 winters." More cheers followed. The elder continued, "The gods test us in ways we cannot foresee. Today they tested our courage and found us worthy. Tomorrow, they may test us again. But together we stand stronger than alone." Njala leaned against Calder's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. "Together," she whispered. Outside, the northern lights began to dance across the sky, green and blue ribbons stretching from horizon to horizon. The villagers emerged from the hall to watch the spectacle, many believing it to be the Valkyries riding across the heavens. Standing under that celestial display, with Calder's arm around her and their daughter between them, Njala felt the truth of her path more clearly than ever before. She had once been promised to a cold lord seeking only possession, but had found her way to true warmth, a love freely given and freely received. The gods had not abandoned her that wedding day long ago. They had simply been guiding her toward a different fate, a greater destiny than she could have imagined. Not as a lord's possession, but as a healer, a mother, a wife chosen for love rather than alliance. As if sensing her thoughts, Calder pulled her closer. "What are you thinking, my heart?" Njala smiled up at him. "That sometimes we must defy fate to find it." Above them, the lights continued their eternal dance, weaving patterns across the star-filled sky, a reminder that even in the coldest lands, there was beauty to be found, and warmth to be cherished.